Good morning. This is Ron. Welcome to Story Time. So this is Sunday, and it is June the 11th. And we're on Law 9, win through actions, never through argument. Any momentary triumph you may have gained through argument is really a Pyrrhic victory. The resentment and ill will you stir up is stronger and lasts longer than any momentary change of opinion. It is much more powerful to get others to agree with you through your actions without saying a word. Demonstrate, do not explicate. In 1502... Now, let's see. Let's start with... Now, let's not go to that one. Let's see here. All right, well, let's just go with this. The engineer, whose name has not been recorded by history, had been spent his life designing masts and pillars and was respected as the finest engineer in a city that excelled in the science. He knew he was right. A smaller ram would allow more speed and carry more force. Larger is not necessarily better. Of course, the consul would see his logic and would eventually understand that science is neutral and reason superior. How could the consul possibly persist in his ignorance if the engineer showed him detailed diagrams and explained the theories behind his advice? The military engineer was the quintessence of the arguer, a type found everywhere among us. The arguer does not understand that words are never neutral, and that by arguing with a superior, he impugns the intelligence of one more powerful than he. He also has no awareness of the person he is dealing with. Since each man believes that he is right, and words will rarely convince him otherwise, the arguer's reasoning falls on deaf ears. When cornered, he only argues more, digging his own grave. Once he has made the other person feel insecure and inferior in his beliefs, the eloquence of Socrates could not save the situation. It is not simply a question of avoiding an argument with those who stand above you. We all believe we are masters in the realm of opinion and reasoning. You must be careful then. Learn to demonstrate the correctness of your ideas indirectly. And the next story on observance of the law is about Michelangelo. In 1502 in Florence, Italy, an enormous block of marble stood in the works department of the Church of Santa Maria del Fiore. It had once been a magnificent piece of raw stone, but an unskilled sculptor had mistakenly bored a hole through it where it should have been the figure's legs, generally mutilating it. So Michelangelo was summoned to the location to see if he could do something to salvage this piece of marble. So Michelangelo decided that he could do something with this piece of marble. And weeks later, as he was putting the final touches on the statue, and a man named Soderini entered the studio. Fancying himself a bit of a connoisseur, he studied the huge work and told Michelangelo that while he thought it was magnificent, the nose, he judged, was too big. Michelangelo realized that Soderini was standing in a place right under the giant figure and did not have the proper perspective. Without a word, he gestured for Soderini to follow him up the scaffolding. Reaching the nose, he picked up his chisel, as well as a bit of marble dust that lay on the planks. With Soderini just a few feet below him on the scaffolding, Michelangelo started to tap lightly with the chisel, letting the bits of dust he'd gathered in his hands to fall little by little. He actually did nothing to change the nose, but gave every appearance of working on it. After a few minutes of the charade, he stood aside. "Look at it now." "I like it better," replied Soderini. "You've made it come alive." Michelangelo knew that by changing the shape of the nose, he might ruin the entire sculpture. Yet, this Soderini was a patron who prided himself on his aesthetic judgment. To offend such a man by arguing would not only gain Michelangelo nothing, it would put future commissions in jeopardy. Michelangelo was too clever to argue. His solution was to change Soderini's perspective, literally bringing him closer to the nose, without making him realize that this was the cause of his misperception. Fortunately for posterity, Michelangelo found a way to keep the perfection of the statue intact while at the same time making Soderini believe he had improved it. Such is the double power of winning through actions rather than argument. no one is offended, and your point is proven. In the realm of power, you must judge your moves by their long-term effects on people. The problem in trying to prove a point or gain a victory through argument is that in the end you can never be certain how it affects the people you're arguing with. They may appear to agree with you politely, but inside they may resent you. Or perhaps something you said inadvertently even offended them. Words have that insidious ability to be interpreted according to the other person's mood and insecurities. Even the best argument has no solid foundation, for we all have come to distrust the slippery nature of words. And days after arguing with somebody, we often revert to our old opinion out of sheer habit. Understand this, words are a dime a dozen. Everyone knows that in the heat of an argument, we will all say anything to support a cause. We will quote the Bible, refer to unverifiable statistics. Who can be persuaded by bags of air like that? Action and demonstration are much more powerful and meaningful. They are there before our eyes for us to see. Yes, now the statue's nose does look just right. There are no offensive words, no possibility of misinterpretation. No one can argue with a demonstrated proof. As Balthasar remarks, the truth is generally seen, rarely heard. Sir Christopher Wren was England's version of a Renaissance man. He had mastered the sciences of mathematics, astronomy, physics, and physiology. Yet during his extremely long career as England's most celebrated architect, he was often told by his patrons to make impractical changes in his design. Never once did he argue or offend. He had other ways of proving his point. In 1688, Wren designed a magnificent town hall for the city of Westminster. The mayor, however, was not satisfied. In fact, he was nervous. He told Wren that he was afraid the second floor was not secure and that it could all come crashing down on his office on the first floor. He demanded that Wren add 2 stone columns for extra support. Wren, the consummate engineer, knew that these columns would serve no purpose, and that the mayor's fears were baseless. But he built them, and the mayor was grateful. It was only years later that when workmen on a high scaffold were working on it, they saw that the columns he had built stopped just short of the ceiling. They were dummies. But both men got what they wanted. The mayor could relax, and Wren knew posterity would understand that his original design worked and the columns were unnecessary. The power of demonstrating your idea is that your opponents do not get defensive and are therefore more open to your persuasion. Making them literally and physically feel your meaning is infinitely more powerful than argument. A heckler once interrupted Nikita Khrushchev in the middle of a speech in which he was denouncing the crimes of Stalin. "You are a colleague of Stalin's," the heckler yelled. "Why didn't you stop him then?" Khrushchev apparently could not see the heckler and barked out, "Who said that?" No hand went up. Not one moved a muscle. After a few seconds of tense silence, Khrushchev finally said in a quiet voice, "Now you know why I didn't stop him." Instead of just arguing that anyone facing Stalin was afraid, knowing that the slightest sign of rebellion would mean certain death, he had made them feel what it was like to face Stalin. Had made them feel the paranoia, the fear of speaking up, the terror of confronting the leader, in this case, Khrushchev. The demonstration was visceral, and no more argument was necessary. The most powerful persuasion goes beyond action into symbol. The power of a symbol, a flag, a mythic story, a monument to some emotional event, is that everyone understands you without anything being said. In 1975, when Henry Kissinger was engaged in some frustrating negotiations with the Israelis over the return of part of the Sinai Desert that they had seized in the 1967 war, he suddenly broke off a tense meeting and decided to do some sightseeing. He paid a visit to the ruins of the ancient fortress of Masada, known to all Israelis as the place where 700 Jewish warriors committed mass suicide in AD 73 rather than give in to the Roman troops besieging them. The Israelis instantly understood the message of Kissinger's visit. He was indirectly accusing them of courting mass suicide. Although the visit did not by itself change their minds, it made them think far more seriously than any direct warning could have. Symbols like this carry great emotional significance. When aiming for power or trying to conserve it, always look for the indirect route and choose your battles carefully. It does not matter in the long run whether the other person agrees with you or if time and their own experience will make them understand what you mean. Then it is best not even to bother with a demonstration. Save your energy and walk away. And that's the end of Law 9, which is, don't bother to argue. Just go ahead and demonstrate your position. Win through actions, never through argument. Problem with this so-called law is that it's based on something called determinism. The idea that nobody has any free will and that everybody is forced to act by forces beyond their control. In this particular case, they're suggesting that the words that you use will force people to be resentful, will force people to resist, will force people to maybe even harm you in some way, shape, or form. Not true. It's just simply not true. Everybody has free will, and they can use their free will for good or ill. The main thing is to size people up. Are you dealing with somebody that is rational? You don't bother generally to make rational arguments to irrational people. Generally speaking, you don't deal with irrational people. You leave them alone. It's like the best part of this whole chapter was at the end when it said that you walk away. Save your energy and walk away. Size people up. If they're dolts, morons, and they are going to be easily offended, save your energy and walk away. There was a situation once where I was, when I was a teenager, and I was in some kind of a teenage group for I don't know what it was there for. But my parents put me in this little group, some kind of therapy of some sort. Anyways, one of the guys in the group had carved some, I don't remember his initials. They've carved a word, carved a design or something in his arm. Taken a knife and carved it in his arm, and he had all these scabs and stuff like this on his arm, and there was a girl that was sitting next to him that was worried and impressed with this and made a big fuss over him. And I was the kind of guy that liked attention. So I kind of got the idea here. Hey, maybe if I go ahead and carve something in my arm, then I'm going to get a similar type of attention. So I went home, but I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't have a knife handy or didn't want to use a knife, and I just got the sharp end of a paper clip to try and scratch my initials into my arm. And it was done very tentatively. I think I got maybe the first two initials, scratched in very thin lines, and they drew blood and they scabbed up and whatnot. But right after that, and then I kind of got discouraged with the whole idea after that. Thank goodness. But I forgot about it, right? So I go to school, and I'm at school, and maybe I had short sleeves on or whatever the situation was, but the arm was exposed with the scabs and the initials. And the individual, one of the people that I went to school with named Dave, and he happened to see it. And he said to me, "Hey, Hardgrove, did you scratch your initials into your arm?" Real smart, Hardgrove. And it was very sarcastic. But it was exactly what I needed to hear, the way I needed to hear it at that particular time. As it hit me right between the eyes, and I realized exactly how stupid what I had done was. And also realized at the same time how pathetic, how sad that boy that I had encountered in that group was for carving himself up that way. That he was not to be admired, that he was somebody that needed help. And anyways, that's the point, is that when you're talking to people, basically you got to know who you're talking to, and very often saying something directly, saying something blunt is what somebody needs to hear and the way they need to hear it. So anyways, that's the end of Law 9. And next Saturday, we're going to do Law 10. And it's about infection. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. You can die from someone else's misery. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You may feel you're helping the drowning man, but you're only precipitating your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it in on you. Associate with the happy and fortunate instead. So that's the end of this episode of Storytime, and we will see you next week. Have a great week.